looks. You don't mind? Okay.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah.
Okay. You're used.
Yeah.
You love it.
I'm not very self-conscious or whatever.
So yeah, I mean,
So you guys live in Orange County, huh?
Yeah, we're living over in Orange County with our parents. It's kind of difficult to live in California, as you can be aware. Like, you know, even with programming, it's kind of an undersaturated market, but it can still be pretty difficult to find stable work. Not just like your run-of-the-mill contract work. You pick something up, some rich guy wants something done, and then, you know, you work maybe for 3 months. Maybe you're promised a little bit of equity, and you know, a lot of times he's taking, you know, far less than he's worth because he, you know, believes in his projects. And I kind of feel like sometimes he gets a little screwed over when that occurs. Okay, so we have all right. And the cups. I know.
Yeah.
When's the last time you had shots?
Yeah.
Do you remember the last time?
I did have it. I moved away, and then I had it one other time after I moved away. But anyway. Oh, I know I had it in Goodyear.
This is the McChicken. Ooh, I'm sorry. Shit. Kind of shooken a little bit. Did a little bit of walking. I kind of make sure.
Okay.
Well, actually, it was dollar tax, so really like hurt.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy when he told me, oh, Terry's in San Diego right now. I'm like, Terry's in San Diego right now? What is he doing in San Diego? And then I just had started talking to one of my friends again that lives out here, and she said, oh yeah, guys, come over here, stay the night, whatever. And they're like, well, you know, we have someone here we need to help save, and you know, when we decided to make the decision to go, you know, the community, they really jumped out and tried to support you.
Yeah,
some really good people on the internet.
Well, yeah, I'm kind of hopeful that someday, like Elon Musk or somebody's going to take notice of God talking. I'm hopeful, but anyway.
Well, yeah, it's kind of.
Well, I've been sort of communicating on Twitter, sort of, on back channels, sort of. But anyway, I don't know. But that's not unusual. Nothing ever happens. Nothing ever turns up out of the wise, you know, like back channel stuff. But anyway. So yeah.
Warm, but
yeah, you want to go ahead and eat? Or? Okay.
You see the meeting today? Good.
Why aren't we at Walmart? We should be at Walmart. I mean, it kind of is.
That's actually where I got it.
So I had a number of questions. You were there. Forgot my laptop.
Kelsey's mom bought it for me.
You really?
Right.
Yeah.
I wonder.
Right.
I really don't know if she bought that one for her.
But I think I remember most of them.
Okay.
So, okay, I wanted to ask you about Lisp. You sort of went into that. Maybe I don't know if you wanted to say anything more of it. Well, what do you think about functional programming in general?
I took a languages course in school, a semester or something, and we covered several languages, and I had, you know, a couple weeks on Lisp. That was the only, and then I went back and I looked at it several years ago, and I decided it looked like it would be a lot of work to get anything done with it. I don't think doing a compiler would be that hard. I don't remember, but
I think you should say it less.
Well, the thing that they say about Lisp is that most programming languages that implement new features implement a part of Common Lisp that's already implemented. You know, besides static typing, which is another question that I wanted to ask you about is static
typing versus dynamic typing, and duck typing, if you know what that is.
Mm.
Or if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, it's a duck. You know, like if an object does this, this, and that, it's that object. You know, sort of like
Yeah.
that's dynamic typing.
Yeah, that's not a part of Holy See, but
So
I don't have a problem with it. I
Holy
mean,
See is weekly.
I just had the worst anxiety.
So
this year.
yeah, let's get. I guess.
Because I felt it
Could
start to
you
fly
explain
out of my hands a
the
couple
decision
times, and I was
behind
like,
that? Because I obviously
really don't know if I can.
you know, there's a
go
reason
after
for that, and
Did you hear what I said to her? I was like, well,
I like assembly. Assembly has very little control, and so when I made the Holy See, I wanted it more like assembly, where you can do whatever you want, and it's not stopping you. And that's more or less the reason. The interesting, when I did the type casting, C of course is prefix type casting. You put it before then they invented those other type casting, the other for the expanded language. The original C just had you put it in parentheses, the data type, you know, before it, right?
yeah.
In Holy See, I was doing the compiler, and it was in the original. I didn't care at all about compatibility. I was like, I'll just do whatever. And then later on, I was like, oh, you know, maybe I should make it compatible. And like when I first did the typecasting, I did it postfix because it was easier to do in the compiler. There's a lot more. Putting a prefix would have made it a lot more ugly. So, and then I was like, oh man, I should really go back and make that standard. And I went back in there, and oh, it's just too ugly. I was like, no, I'm not doing that.
So with strict typing, there's a new trend, but it's also it has roots in academia where it comes.
You know, once they took C and they added 3 different types, I was like, that's just junky. And they're really cumbersome. They're not like standard. You know, you got the letters in there, and that's just awful. It's not elegant. It's like, why'd you do that? I don't like it.
Yeah, so there's typed versions of a Lambda calculus, and
Yeah, you know, a lot of those things you might use once in a blue moon, but mostly, you know,
yeah.
and you get a little bit. Everybody loves paying attention to those, but like you don't use them very often, you know.
Yeah, what do you think about ML? You know ML, right? Or
Well,
brief, just a little bit.
I've heard of machine language, but I don't think that's
Yeah,
what it
ML is
So didn't you say you're thinking
or
about
Haskell,
Python?
perhaps. I'm trying to think of a more common functional programming language.
I think it's the time to do it.
I haven't had any reason to use anything else. I just avoid it. Assembly, C, Pascal. These are the ones I program professionally in, and I've learned some of the. At one point, when I was about 1996, the internet was getting big. I'm like, you know what? There's another generation coming along. I'm just gonna let them do all the internet stuff. I'm gonna stick to what because my background was like the low level assembly stuff, right? So I'm like, I'm gonna specialize. You know, doctors go into specialties.
Right.
So I made a conscious effort. I'm just gonna avoid all the internet stuff. I was like, I'll just let the next generation deal with that. Got enough you know, everything you know about the internet is probably something I know about something pre-internet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like.
Yeah, we definitely grew up in a generation that was
Yeah.
rapidly advancing.
So like every time you think you know something I don't know, there's probably something I know that you don't know. You know, that's kind of. So that's.
But it's really interesting because you don't really get this perspective very often. You know, it's not like you can go to many meets where people like you, really intelligent people, go and discuss. I mean, nowadays you have these kind of recruiter traps where, you know, you go to these places, you know, it's all casual.
Really just very, very capitalized markets.
And they normally have a talk or some sort of, you know, talk about some new subject. And basically it's just a kind of trapping ground for these recruiters. They start talking to you and, you know, they're just trying to bring you into their office, get you to sign their contracts, you know, get employed and work for a company. You know?
I mean, it's not so bad. It's just, you know, right now, they're really distinguishing rather than saying that you're a very distinguished programmer. It'll be you are a Python programmer, you are a JavaScript programmer, you are a C programmer. That's the
You
language
just get
defined.
pigeonholed that way.
Exactly.
Oh yeah.
So it's a lot different.
Somehow like imagine.
But getting back to static typing,
like creativity, kind of like writing
a lot of people. So you know Ada, right? Well, you know what it is.
Yeah.
People are saying, because they write airplane control applications in those kinds of languages because they don't want the airplane to crash due to some runtime error.
So my mentor was, well,
Is it good?
Peter Gadwa at Ticketmaster, and he influenced a lot of my thinking, and he had bad things to say about Ada. He said a committee got together and everybody threw in all their ideas, and he ended up with a bloated language with so many ideas in there, and he didn't like it. So I never even looked at it, but I had a bad opinion from him talking about it. But, he said that's what happens. You get the government committee. Everybody puts. You don't have strong leadership in the government committee, and everybody just put in their ideas and stuff. But I don't know.
A lot of people want those kinds of static constraints. At least one part of Ada that was sane for like very secure systems, and they want to implement it in more like concise, easy to understand languages.
I'm not saying that Temple OS is for let's say professional. It's purposely it's. I could almost just call it a toy on purpose. That's what it's for. It's a lot. I don't find I find those annoying. It takes the fun out of it. When you make it too bureaucratic, it makes the fun out of it.
Yeah, like
on the Commodore, it was simple to get stuff done, and you didn't lose motivation. Like if it takes let's say putting a graphic on the screen, right? A lot like I was looking at X Windows, and it was like a really discouraging number of lines of code just to get something on the screen, right? It was like, 50 lines of code just to get something on the screen, and then you start copying and pasting chunks of code, and you don't know what to do, and at that point, So I didn't. I purposely made it simple so that you don't lose motivation trying to get stuff done with the bureaucratic stuff. Just having to. I know what really made me angry was I was using the C compiler for many years, and then they started putting this const in there, right? They're like, oh no, you have to tell it what's constant, right? I was like, I don't want to mess with this. After years of, it's like, oh come on, no, that just doesn't interest me, right? I'm saying, like years and years, and it's just an annoyance,
Well, yeah, I know. So one point about that though is with const, it does optimize.
Yeah, I know.
So
yeah.
But
I was not interested. I was like, no, I don't want to be bugged. It just drove me nuts. Years and years is a nice thing, and then it's just a major hassle. Every time they're just harping on me like all the time. Oh, I don't want to fudge with this. You're using some library thing. You got to worry about the const, And so it just took the fun out of it, right? Sapped some motivation, right? Or like before that, you never worried about it, right? And now you just got this extra bureaucracy added to it, and it takes away the motivation,
So one of my friends, he mentioned with libraries, it seems more difficult to upgrade a library in a dynamically typed language than in a static typed language, because if you upgrade a library, let's say from version 1 to version 2, with the dynamic language, a lot of errors would happen at runtime, and so you have to keep running the program over and over again to get these errors, and that's assuming you would exhaust all test cases. Whereas with a static type language, strictly tested, not a weekly type one, you would get those errors as soon as you compile the program. What do you think the future would be as a sort of middle ground between this easy to use, like weekly type, fun Commodore 64.
Let me tell you something.
January, early February, I had
Over the years, programs have gotten bigger,
but like it's still like there's a sense
and
of thing.
they've developed strategies
I kind of
for
don't
bigger
know what's
programs.
going on.
And what they start doing is putting in all these extra things when you have the monster projects. And when the project is smaller, you don't need this stuff. I'm just telling you, you don't have to waste all the bureaucracy on all this stuff. Because if you have a small enough program, it wasn't a problem. And so all these now they try to tie as much down as possible, and take away all the error potential, take away all that stuff. And what they've done is they've just added a whole bunch of bureaucracy, and they're taking the fun out of it. And that's because it's gotten so big that that's how they do their development for these big projects. Is they try, we got so many people. The only way we can do anything is to like lock down as much as possible. And on a smaller if you're doing it yourself,
Turn that phone around.
for in the early years, there were a lot of single-person projects. It happens, and now it's a whole different situation. You don't have to. I don't know how to put it, but like you don't have to communicate all the if it's just you, then you don't have to lock everything down quite so much, because you know what's going on. I know that sounds like bad. This is truth. I'm just saying, when it was a smaller scale and you had like a single programmer, you didn't need all that bureaucracy. Yeah, you're getting it all done,
But nowadays too, you have a lot of people who are like those solo
here's
people
what
making apps.
here's what I do.
on app market.
Here's my classic. I'm gonna if somebody's coming in for a job interview, I'm gonna say, okay, can you tell me all the ways that you adapt your programming style and your algorithms so that when you start scaling up, and then I'm gonna expect them to start rambling off, what their ways for scaling up, and I'll ask them, now, what's the right thing to do when you scale down? And they're gonna say, well, no, you just use the same ones. No, that's not how it works. On an airplane, if you got a wing, you do the right one for the design. You don't put like a monster wing on there. You put the one that's so
Crap, yeah.
so if whatever you do to scale up, if it's a 1,000,000 line project, in theory you should do a little bit different. You should be a little bit, it does. I like to say it doesn't just get bad; it gets worse. When you go up, and it doesn't just get better. It doesn't just get good; it gets better. I don't know why you want to say it clever or something. But anyway,
A lot of times too, they, obviously they're more focused on adding features.
Here's a classic. Everybody hates global variables, right? But like on the Commodore, where it's just like a beginner, it's like there's nothing wrong with that. It's like, oh, well, they're going to be brain damage because they used a global it's just like a
So what's kind of ironic is now, all these languages are getting what are called packages. And basically, packages are just exporting global scope variables, but they're packages. Like instead of having a header file and an implementation file, it'll be one file, but you control what you export to the external.
Okay, well, it wasn't that complicated on the Commodore. It was.
Oh yeah, there was no header.
Yeah.
Obviously, but just looking at. Like kind of you were saying, like at a bigger scale, right? With their industrial programs. Do you think the header source distinction is relevant at all in modern programming?
In Temple OS, I got rid of the headers. There's a few places in the kernel. There's a few headers, but most of it just includes the whole thing. Doesn't have headers. And one thing that drives me nuts is some people insist on doing it backward from. They want to do forward declarations before the function. Why are you doing that? I don't understand why you insist on doing that. Like some people say, well, the right way to do it is top down.
Oh.
It's just like the classic is milk is for baby cows. It's like what? Like a professor says, well, obviously you want to do it top down. Put your main routine and then your other routines. I'm going. it doesn't matter to me, you know. Like I'm just gonna do it the way the compiler wants to do it, which is the little ones first, or the low level, and then up, you know. Because then you don't have the
Bottom up.
yeah, bottom up, yeah.
So Lisp is a lot like that. I accidentally designed a program top down recently, and debugging it was hell. I spent 10 hours
Yeah.
straight because I was streaming as well.
Yeah,
And I was debugging this thing. 'cause I
You
had
have,
so
you have to
many-
realize some people have opinions like that. Like Big Endian was back when I was Motorola had Big Endian and Intel had Little Endian. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
And I had a professor, and he was just like, he was a Motorola guy. I was at ASU, and he's like, "Oh, Big Endian's the way to go," and I'm going, "Dude, it ain't the way to go."
You like Little Onion better?
Oh,
Or just
there is, it's kind of like no question if you, how do I put this? If you've ever programmed in assembly, or how do I put this? You really don't want Big Endian because then you can't put like the, let's say you want to add to let's say a 16-bit to a 32-bit.
My first.
It's just not a computer. Look, here's the way I put it. A computer wants to operate a certain way. Try and go with the flow instead of like fighting it. You know what I mean? So like a lot of these things, it really doesn't matter one way or the other. But my theory is do it the way the computer wants to do it. You know what I mean? If the computer wants to do it bottom up, do it bottom up. Don't do it top down. Why are you being so weird? You know, it doesn't really matter that much. And like as far as I'm concerned, there's really no debate to the Little Endian, Big Endian. It's definitely Little Endian. The only place where Big Endian is good is I think you want that on networks. You know what I mean? Then you send the most significant so they can start switching.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's brilliant.
Yeah. So.
Just on the scooter.
Anyway, so yeah, I like to make fun of milk is for baby cows. Yeah, I'll go
We
outside.
bought you cigarettes.
Okay, you go outside. Yeah.
Yeah, so
We can
kind
start-
of in that black bag.
We can start streaming, see if it works at the
Yeah.
New Resolution.
Does that set the camera?
Take just one, or
Yeah, okay. Yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
Cool.
Go ahead. You can stop.
okay.
Wait, no.
Yeah, these are